everyone. I'm Paige Smith with After School, a podcast project from Simon Fraser University's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology. After School showcases FCAT alumni in traditional and unconventional career paths across communications, interactive art and technology, contemporary arts, publishing, and digital media. We would like to respectfully acknowledge the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kakat, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen peoples whose unceded traditional territories our three campuses reside. In today's episode of After School, School of Contemporary Arts student Ethan Ukrainetz speaks with interdisciplinary artistic duo Olive Theory, which includes performers Shion Skye and Stefan Nazarevich. They discuss the process of creativity and challenging the status quo through art. Shion and Stefan are both alumni of SFU School of Contemporary Arts, specifically the dance and music programs, and have since gone on to create art professionally in the Vancouver area. They share a bit about their experiences at SFU and how they transitioned into the professional arts world. They help dispel some of the mysteries involved in becoming professional artists. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
So good to have you guys here. I'm here with Shion Skye and Stefan Nazarevich. Do you want your middle name in there?
No.
Awesome. It's so good to have you guys here. Do you mind just introducing yourself?
So I'm Stefan. I'm a musician. I live here in Vancouver. I love making pour-over coffee.
That's your introduction?
It's my introduction.
Okay. And then he slurps his coffee right after saying that. Hi, my name is Shion, and I'm an independent dance artist and interdisciplinary performer. We're both coming to you right now from Mount Pleasant in so-called Vancouver on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
Thanks so much. What are 2 or so works that you guys have been working on recently?
For our work, we do a lot of independent projects, me mostly in the dance realm and Stefan in music and composition. It's actually been a little while since we've come together and created something as our interdisciplinary duo, Olive Theory. I've mostly been focusing on a solo dance project that I've been developing since 2019. It's called Residuals, and it's a dance work that integrates Japanese calligraphy with movement, and it's really a way for me to reconnect to parts of my Japanese heritage that I felt a bit distanced from since I immigrated to Canada at a young age. That project premiered in October in Montreal, presented by Tangent. I'm thankful that it's going to premiere in Vancouver as well this November at the Dance Center. So that's the main project independently that I've been focusing on for the last couple of years and throughout the pandemic. Yeah, aside from that, mostly working as a dance artist, performing in other choreographers' works.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of like, there's 2 answers to that question because we work together as a duo sometimes, but of course we're also, not always doing that. For myself, the main thing that's been encompassing a lot of the last, 2 years is I'm working on releasing my first album of music, and it's called Arc Maps, and it's a visual album that sort of takes place in a fictional, speculative science fiction universe. So it kind of deals with a lot of stuff, just speculating about the future of our existence and what that might look like, and reflecting on human intimacy and increasingly detached and virtualized environments. So that's been my main thing. And it's really cool to say that because that's something that's for myself, not something that someone hired me to do. But I love those things too. And I've been working with Shion to develop some music for a couple of her pieces, as well as working with a few other artists around the city. One piece I'm excited about coming up is doing sound design for an exhibition by a visual artist, Cindy Mochizuki. So it's going to be sort of Japanese folklore based artwork that will get installed in Kingston, Ontario.
And then I guess for our duo, the main project is a work called Reach Close, which we started when we were students at SFU, just developing the initial seeds of ideas when we were finishing up our degrees there. And that work premiered as a live performance in 2019.
In October 2019.
Yes. And then during the pandemic, in the thick of the first lockdown, we decided to recreate this work, which is an installation of piano wires that are amplified with contact microphones. And the sound is triggered and created through embodied performance. We set up the installation in our living room in our old apartment and created a filmed version.
Yeah, and so I think it was also kind of like an examination of like how we could take installation art, which is obviously a very site-specific thing, and kind of recontextualize it to be in the only places that we were allowed to be at that time, which was in our home.
Yeah, how would you describe some of that work where it's like the crossover between musical work and performance work? How would you say like Olive Theory does that?
That's like the core conversation that gave birth to the idea of Olive Theory, which was just like, if we were making art that wasn't just, I'm making music, Shion is dancing, there it is. Because we do that with each other, but we can also do that with other people. So what would be unique to us? What is the art form that comes out of our specific skill sets and our specific interests on top of that? And
I think one way that we've described it in the past is, especially when we were students and we started to work together with dance and music, we noticed that the music would get composed as a separate sort of entity, and then it would become a music file, and then you press play and it plays on the speakers, and it's kind of separate from the dancing, even if they're part of the same project. So we were wondering how we can bring those layers together and integrate them to be more on the same playing field. So I think one of the main parts of Olive Theory that makes it unique and fun for us is the exchange of our skills and sharing it with each other and with the audience. So I guide Stefan through embodied movement practices and how to perform with the body and
with comical results.
And how to use the body as an instrument. And then Stefan has been teaching me about skills in music composition and noticing nuances of sound and how to actually develop a musical structure, and then bringing in installation and sculpture and our interest in that side of art into it as well. We have also been learning new skills together, like instrument building and a bit of woodworking. And so it's been really cool for each of us to learn new skills by teaching each other what we know, but also to embark on learning skills that neither of us have done before, like instrument building.
Wow, that sounds super cool. How would you say that this work that you're doing, either like by yourselves individually or with Olive Theory, has been challenging some norms in the space that you're in, or pushing boundaries, or expanding topics? You mentioned bringing dance and music on the same playing field. How would you say that that's kind of shaping the environment that you've put yourselves in?
I don't know that we're necessarily doing anything super groundbreaking with Olive Theory, but I think that it's just like the natural way of things to sort of break those structures that we're used to observing everything in. Like, I think you can just see how over time everything sort of erodes and develops, and, you know, the way that we're even making music these days is nothing like the way that we were making music 100 years ago, although some people are determined to try. But I think that it's just a natural sort of entropy of these things, breaking these things down, realizing that you can move and embody your performance and make sound. Those things don't have to be separate. And I think it's also like using one to achieve the other, using movement, using embodied performance to achieve a sonic creation is, I would say, one of the things that we're just doing a little bit differently. And likewise, using sound as the motivation for movement. In one of the first iterations of the piece that we did, we had almost theatrical movement about it, where when the lights would come up, we would be like discovering, like acting. We'd be like, oh, we're discovering that this wire can make sound. We're discovering that we can pluck it. Oh, what does this do? And it went from, with the help of our mentors at the time, Sabrina and Mauricio, who are SFU music profs, we kind of realized it made so much more sense to just own it, because we built that instrument. We designed that whole thing. We came up with that idea. You don't see a pianist walk on stage and like experiment, be like, oh, what does this key do? No, they've been training their whole lives for that. And so to own the professionalism, to own that skill level, and to not inject too much of a story into it,
That was a big shift for us.
It was a huge shift. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that's exciting, also just discipline wise, we were entering, the professional realm after graduating from university, and we were feeling a bit not necessarily limited, but perhaps we were just curious about what the limits were with the labels and disciplines that we had decided to pursue with our degrees. So I did a degree in dance and Stefan did a degree in music. So we were wondering, does that mean that I have limitations to what I can or should do as a dance artist? What counts as work as a dance artist? And for Stefan, what counts as I am working as a musician or a composer? And so for us to have that level playing field when it comes to performing as a duo, as someone who maybe has more years of working with my body and with movement technique than Stefan does, I don't think I dance or move more in the performance than Stefan does. We move and perform pretty much an equal amount. And Stefan and I both take part in composing the sound and making choices and having agency. And so we feel like we're breaking apart some of the ideas or the boxes that we felt a bit put into with being in the disciplines of dance and music. So that's been a nice to break that apart a bit.
And making our art interdisciplinary instead of multidisciplinary. So the most important idea there, I think, was that it wasn't just dance and music. It was two artists with skill sets learning from each other, and there were no labels on it.
Mm-hmm. I think something we'd like to also start breaking apart more, especially with Reach Close, the installation work with the piano wire, is the separation between audience and performer. So if we have been able to set aside the expectations we had in our own mind of how does a dance artist perform and how does a music artist perform, and we are creating a new way of performing that feels right to us, that's more integrated, how can we make that integration happen from the performer and audience side of things too? So the first performance we did of Reach Close, it was quite obvious who the audience was versus us two as the performers. We had the installation set up in an entire room. We did this at Left of Main in Chinatown, and the entire room became the instrument because the piano wires were strung floor to ceiling. And then the chairs were set up in the round all around the edges of the room. But then at the end of the work, we did our thanks and our bows, and then we invited everyone from the audience to come in and interact with the piano wire themselves and handed out violin bows that people could use to strum the piano wires. And that was a really fun and exciting thing to see. I know that I was so stoked to see how excited people were to play with the instruments. It's got us thinking more about maybe going into the realm of public art or some space that this installation could live where the audience becomes the performer and they can interact however they want to, or they can compose sound with this instrument themselves.
That would be so cool. It's just like, I see people like interacting with these instruments that they've made, and then to like get the chance to do it yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would love to do that, especially like kids. I feel like they would have such curious minds, and they would probably find ways to interact with the piano wire installation in ways that we wouldn't think to do, like maybe certain ways of using their bodies or different objects, because the sound that comes out of the piano wire is different depending on the type of surface that it interacts with and what vibrations are created. So your skin touching it would make a different sound than a violin bow touching it. I don't know. I feel like young people would be so excited to play with a giant installation instrument.
Yeah, that just sounds awesome. What you're doing is making a new space where you can perform both with music and with dance, and using this combination to kind of like break these boundaries of like what it means to be a dancer and what it means to be a music performer. I love what you're saying about the audience versus performance boundary that you're starting to blur as well. I think that's such a cool way of experimenting. How would you say that this works into the vision of your work, this experimental nature?
I mean, I think that pretty much every aspect of it is just an experiment. And I think there's like, experimental as an aesthetic, and then there's like experimentation in like a scientific sense. I want to try something and see what the result is. And I don't really care if it is challenging or not challenging to the audience. I don't care if it is aesthetically looked upon as a rigorous artistic practice or not. It does feel like we're playing and being like workers in a lab. Like we're trying something and we're seeing what happens.
Especially, I felt like that when we were just getting started with figuring out how to even make piano wire make that sound and make tones that we wanted it to make. Because at the beginning, we really started from scratch and we were trying different types of microphones. We were trying touch sensors that didn't end up working and different types of wire too.
To be clear, we didn't think of the idea to use piano wire. There's other artists that are doing it, but you can't go on YouTube and look up a tutorial for how to do any of this, right? Like, you know, it's not like being like, okay, how do I make like flume type beat? You can find like 1,000 videos on YouTube that'll tell you how to do that, but there's no resources or really any community that we could find that was discussing that type of stuff online. So in that sense, even though, as I said, we're not breaking new ground, we were for ourselves, and we had to discover a lot of this ourselves. Like, don't buy braided wire because that is going to thrash your violin bow, which seems obvious now that I say it out loud, but we went ahead and bought it.
It just doesn't make very good sound.
Right, and like how much the material matters, how much the microphone matters. A contact mic is not a contact mic. There's many varying degrees of quality in terms of that and like what you get. And there was another big difference when we started recording it and processing it through like guitar pedals rather than like digital signal processing inside the computer. The digital processing gave a much more consistent sound, which is good, but that also felt a lot less genuine. So then when we brought guitar pedals into the equation, it was like, whoa, like we're really just like working in an analog realm, which is what we wanted to be doing in the first place.
I also really felt a sense of experimentation that I was surprised by. I thought that it would mostly be in the process of figuring out how to get the mechanics working and building the instrument itself. But the experimentation went through every single day of the rehearsal process leading up to the performances.
That's true.
And the performance itself, because the technology was like, I've said this in a previous interview, I think it's like a third performer, and it was so temperamental.
The technology sometimes showed up to rehearsal hungover, you know what I'm saying? Like...
it had its own way of, and the instrument and the installation sounded different every time we used it, and it was never the same 2 days in a row. So there was a constant sense of adjusting, and I guess we learned after a while that we need to listen to the technology and to the installation as much as it takes on what we are trying to place onto it. So it needs to be an exchange, and that
gets its own kind of body itself.
Exchange with technology and conversation in a way was really interesting.
And that idea comes a lot from Shion's dance background as well, I think, because like something I know you've talked about in some of your dance pieces is like, you know, you show up, your body shows up in different ways, even from performance night to performance night, and you can resist that or you can steer into that and embrace it. We tried resisting and that didn't work. so we embraced it.
That's just so cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. It sounds like what you guys are saying about your artistic vision with it is less of a, oh, we're going to go out and change this, or we're going to go out and challenge this thing, and more of, we're just going to experiment with these different forms. Like it's less of a manifesto and more of a play, like you were saying.
I like that. Yeah, I think you put it really well there.
Yeah, I feel like Olive Theory has nothing to prove.
Nothing to prove, only to share. That is a quote that I tell myself all the time before going on stage for a show or anything like that. But that actually relates to our work, I think, actually.
Something I tell myself lately is like, just try it out instead. Not like really sitting down with like, you know, specific goals and intents. Just try it out.
Shifting to like your time at SFU, when did you guys go to SFU?
I was there from 2014 to 2018 in the dance program, and I did graduate from the university a year later in 2019 when I finished my kinesiology minor. I was at SCA from 2014 to 2018.
For me, it was SCA 2015 to 2019, and then I had like 2 courses left over that I finished in 2019 and 2020. I officially finished my degree the first semester that COVID happened. Like it was like in person, went to New York, came back, classes were online.
Wow. So it's pretty recent then for both of you that you guys have stepped out into this more like professional work of.
Yeah, and it's weird to think about that too, because it doesn't feel that way. Like being inside of it, it's like SFU feels like distant memories right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
But when you look at the timeline, yeah, we spent more time at SFU still than we have as professional artists. So yeah, I guess it is pretty recent.
You guys have any memories from your time there?
Oh my gosh, so many. Well, in relation to our duo, and I think we started Olive Theory when I was in my 4th year. I was just about to finish. Or had I already finished the dance program?
You had finished the dance program.
Okay, so you were in your last semester, I think.
Yeah, my last 2 semesters.
Yeah, I think before then we were really just focusing on finishing our courses, and there were opportunities to do creation in the courses, of course, but we thought that you had to have some kind of special license or something to make an art collective or an art company, and we were like, oh wait, we just have to declare that we are a collective. So then we're like, okay, let's pick a name and all of that. That was so exciting to do that. And then to have access to studio space at SFU, we worked in the studios to just start the initial work and worked with our mentors. I think one of my best memories though is in 1st year when I did the interdisciplinary collaboration course, which I think is required of all new students to have one semester where it's just like a huge group of students from every discipline: music, visual art, film, dance, and music, visual art, film, dance. Is that everything?
Theater production.
And theater and acting. Yes. So everyone coming together and you getting put into those small groups with a combination of people from different disciplines and having to make a new project every week. That was super fun. And I think it influenced how Olive Theory came about, that interdisciplinary nature.
When we were like forming the like very first like foundational ideas for the duo while I was still in classes, it was kind of funny because I think it was only like towards the end of my degree that I was able to realize, yes, you got to do your coursework. You have to work for the framework of the university. But that was the first time where I was really like making the framework and the format that I was in work for me, because I had this idea, or we had this idea, and I was the only one enrolled in the class, but I asked Sabrina like if I could bring in Shion as a collaborator for a project for her basically making music with alternative instruments class. And she was like, that's a great idea. And I was like, whoa, you can just have ideas and do them? Like,
there's no paperwork you have to fill out or anything like that.
Yeah, there's no licensing body. It's exactly like what Shion said. Like, I hadn't given much thought to like what I was gonna do after, and so then to like have our own ideas that would actually exist whether we were in university or not, and then take advantage of the resources that we had at our disposal. Yeah, like everyone at SFU was just like so helpful with helping us achieve what we wanted to achieve with like space booking and equipment borrowing and like
ideas for what materials to use and
mentorship. So we were so lucky. I mean, I think that truly like the most valuable thing that I gained from my degree was the people that I met, whether that's my peers, my classmates, also my profs and other mentors that you find around the school. The staff, everyone who works there is and has worked as an artist at some point, and they've got plenty of knowledge that they're happy to share. You just got to ask. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But interdisciplinary course, very, very sick. Mm-hmm. Definitely was formative, I would say, for me as well.
And we also just met so many amazing people at SFU who have gone on to do their own work and create their own collectives and companies. And it's so inspiring. And it's great that we keep in touch with so many people or work with people regularly as regular collaborators as well. So
yeah, and that interdisciplinary studio like really created that community very successfully.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It might not even be that they're doing the same thing that you're doing. It's more of an inspiration to create an experiment. Like you see somebody doing something that's like, oh, wow, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of pushes you to be like, how can I change my perspective on this thing that I already thought?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the most valuable things I think about being in university is like, whether you like it or not, you're exposed to a bunch of different ideas. And I definitely spent my fair share of time not liking it. And I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, it sounds like SFU really helped you guys develop this. Let's try it. Let's do it. Like, what's stopping us right now? We have an idea and we have a way that we might want to try something new or incorporate a new aspect of art. And we have the space to do it now here. Do you guys have any wisdom that you could share to current students who are looking to learn how to make a difference or be experimental in their fields?
I would say connect with your peers, form genuine connections, because in the field of arts, your career is as good as two things. One is your skill and the other is your connections. We work with our friends all the time, and the people that we work with have a habit of becoming our friends. And I think that if you can make a genuine connection, don't force things, but put yourself out there, because while you're at SFU, you're in an incubator, right? There's tons of talented people and you're surrounded by them day in and day out. If you go through that program without making some friends or at least colleagues that you're going to stay in touch with, I think that you're doing yourself a disservice, because at the end of the day, arts needs community. I think that the more of a community that you can find, the more of a community that you can build, the better things will be for you and the better things will be for everyone else. Let's say you're a dancer. You need portraits taken. Who are you going to call? You're going to call one of your film friends, right? And likewise, when your film friends need their big ticket feature scored, they want to call them that musician that they had a good experience working with back when they were in school, right? Someone who they know they can trust. We work in a very personal field. You can treat collaboration like a business, and that part is very important and should be there. But there is also this really personal and human side. And I find when I'm hiring people, I always want to hire a friend first, because I want to enjoy the process of making art. I'm not in this career to make money. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Yeah, jumping off of that, what you said about while you're a student exchanging skills and helping other people out, that's a huge part of starting to put together a portfolio or online presence. I know that when I was a student, I was kind of worried. I thought that I had to wait until I was hired by professional choreographers and got my first contracts in order to put together a CV or put together a website. I was basically waiting for things to happen before I could put myself out there and feel like I could confidently say I am a dance artist and share that with the world. But I realized that I needed to shift my perspective and put together any and all materials that I have, from student choreography things I've done to like dance shows I did at SFU, put anything that I have together and do things in a DIY way. I think that DIY is great, and it's not, you don't have to be worried about looking amateur or anything like that. I think just doing anything to put together a little portfolio or in order to reach out to people and show them examples of your work. And then that's connects back to what Stefan said about building connections and networking being so important. I think SFU is so great, especially because the SCA campus is so small that you could walk to a different area of the building and come across a group of film students, and you can introduce yourself and ask if anyone is like doing any photography or filming, and perhaps you could dance in a film that a student's creating and they could in exchange take photos of you, like headshots like Stefan said, or exchanging your skills and helping other artists out. You're building connections and also providing each other with materials that you can use to build up your portfolios. I've done so many things where we've like just filmed in and around the SFU Woodward's building, because that's space that's provided. You don't have to necessarily put money into everything and like rent a studio space or hire a graphic designer to build your website or go to a really expensive photographer. Like use the services and like the people around you, because there's so many talented people around.
Yeah. And in fact, you should do those things. You should take advantage of that space, because once you're out of university, like so you don't realize how or I didn't realize how much I had until I lost it, you know? And if I may just add one more thing to what you said, because that was extremely inspiring. I'm feeling inspired by those nuggets of wisdom.
You had a little bit of head nod, finger snaps.
I was like, preach.
Snapping.
Not worrying about, looking a little DIY. Because when you're 22 and you're graduating from university, that's the oldest that you've ever been. And you're like, okay, the light switch has flipped. I am now an adult. I am now a professional. But like, even us being a couple years removed, our university time, I think our portfolios look completely transformed from what they looked like when we left SFU. So don't be afraid about putting those student projects on, because you're meant to. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. And those will eventually lose their place in your CV, because you're going to get commissions, and those things will be phased out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Slowly replace them. And
it's not a secret. Yes, I think that's the thing. It's like, you're not trying to fool anyone. In fact, sometimes it can be to your benefit to be like, look, I'm so young, I'm so fresh out of university, and people will see you. You've got your website built, you've got your CV drawn up. Look at how driven you look. Mm-hmm. The fact that nobody gave you permission, nobody gave you help, but you did it anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes when you're a student, there are certain, arts open calls or organizations that make you feel like students are not a welcome in that space, that you have to be at least have had one paid gig or be a professional for X amount of years. And that can be kind of discouraging. I know I found that discouraging.
Yes.
But I think part of the shift in perspective for me that helped with my confidence was knowing that the work that I create as a student, you're still an artist creating artwork. That student label doesn't define you. So you're still an artist making work, and you're doing really similar actions even after you graduate university. It's just you're in a different space, and you might be considered different right after you graduate. It's just strange to me that people are just people creating art, and just because you were a student 3 months before doing a project versus 3 months after, that an organization might see you differently. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that's fair. I think those labels should be erased. So
and plus it's like, why does it matter if the work is paid? We've done stuff for full rates, and we've done stuff for $200 honorariums, and we've done stuff for free since we've graduated and we're working as professional artists. And I have to say, if the piece turns out sick, it's going on my CV. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. No matter what, yeah.
No matter what, right. It doesn't matter how much I got paid.
Any last thoughts?
I would tell my younger self to have confidence in myself and to not be afraid to present myself to the world. I know that I compared myself a lot to other people and had imposter syndrome, and I still do sometimes. Sometimes that confidence, you have to sort of fake it a little bit at first to get the real confidence to come naturally after. And also, don't be afraid to reach out to artists that you admire and ask if they are looking for any interns. You never know until you reach out to somebody.
Well, mic drop. I would say comparison is the death of joy. If someone is a student listening to this, or a prospective student listening to this, thinking any type of way where we are at in our careers, that if you have that comparison mindset, that will never go away, no matter what level of success or perceived success you reach in the eyes of your peers. You got to be doing what you're doing for yourself. I would also tell my younger self to sign up for the freaking internship program at SFU. That is like super valuable.
Yes.
And that is a resource that I don't think students understand how beneficial it is, because I didn't take it. Shion did do it. And Shion's first tour, one of her first...
My first gigs came from being hired by the people who I worked with. Who
she did the internship with. Yeah. So that's real. Plus it's work experience. You better believe that's going on your CV.
And you get credits for
it.
And you get credits. Like the perfect deal.
Yeah. So,
am I scamming someone here? Like, what's going on? Yeah. This can't happen here.
Exactly. Because I didn't, and I do truly regret it. Yeah. I turned out fine, but
those are, you might have made connections with people that you might not even know right now because of that. So yes, definitely look into the internship course. I think it's CA 306 and 406, but the numbers might have
Barbara
changed.
Has done an amazing job on that program, and she is so knowledgeable and so helpful.
Yes, Barbara Adler.
Shout out Barbara Adler.
Shout out Barbara.
One awesome for the 604.
Well, thank you guys so much. Oh, this was like the perfect conversation. Just so many little audio bites and nuggets of wisdom. I love it so much. Where can we find your guys' work or reach out to you guys?
Yeah, you can find me at my website, shionskyecarter.com. That's ShionSkye Carter. I'm also on Instagram at Shion Skye. I think that's mainly it. And Olive Theory is on Instagram at Olive Theory Projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on Instagram, I'm at Stefan Nazarevich. There's first name, last name. Good luck spelling that, though. I don't expect anyone to find that. And if you do find that, DM me and I will give you a virtual high five. Because that
might be worth it.
Improbable. And I've also got my website, which is, again, good luck finding it, but stefannazarevich.com. I release music under the alias San, S-A-N. It's on wherever you listen to music. I have a single called Drip Neon, so you probably have more luck finding that than anything else that I just mentioned. Check that out.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, so much.
Yeah.
No, thank you. That was a lot of fun. Excuse to talk about ourselves for an hour.
After School is a podcast project from Simon Fraser University's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology. This has been our conversation with artists Shion Skye, Carter, and Stefan Nazarevich of Olive Theory, hosted by Ethan Ukrainetz. The After School podcast is created by Tessa Arsenault, Emma Keeler-Dugas, Stacey Copland, myself, Paige Smith, and each of our student hosts. You can learn more about SFU's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology at our website, sfu.ca/FCAT. And you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn with our handle FCAT at SFU. That's FCAT at SFU. You can learn more about SFU School for Contemporary Arts at sfu.ca/SCA and follow them on Facebook and Instagram at SFU Contemporary Arts. You can also follow Olive Theory on Instagram at Olive Theory Projects. Next time on After School, we'll be hosting a conversation with Jesse Finkelstein, an SFU Masters of Publishing alum and the co-founder of Page 2 Books. Make sure you subscribe to After School on your podcasting app of choice so you don't miss this great conversation. See you next time.